What I think is really cool is there's a definite nod to the books with the fades. When they're in the darkness, when they're in the shadow, they can almost kind of teleport. Like they can almost kind of like when they're in the shadow, like you can't even see how fast they are. And so darkness is like this huge advantage for them. And so Verin like sends fire to the sword of her warder Tomas, and he lights the bitch up. He's got this glowing sword, and this obviously puts the Fades at a disadvantage. But before she does this, she stuns them with like percussive sound. So she says, "Cover your ears." Well, for a creature that doesn't have eyes, like how can you disorient them with sound? So like I just thought that was really clever, and I think despite me really loving the books, that's one thing that I think Robert Jordan never really went super far into, because it was always just like, like lightning strikes taking out Trollocs or fire or whatever, but you didn't really get to see the characters who can channel play with the one power in a more tactical way, I guess.
No, you're right.
Help boost this video by giving it a like, and to not miss out on other coverage, make sure you're subscribed. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber here, joined with Laura, and as we get closer to hopefully season 3 of the Wheel of Time, we are in our season 2 podcast rewatch. So we are obviously starting out with the first episode, and because we have seen the entirety of the season, there might be spoilers for future episodes. But yeah, we've got a lot of plot points happening in this first episode. If you kind of put that cold open aside with Ishamael, we've got everything that's going on at the White Tower. We've got Perrin and the Shienarans, and then we've got big problems with Moiraine and Lan. Was there one of those plot lines that stood out to you?
Honestly, a lot of what stands out to me is the Moiraine and Lan plot line.
Okay.
Like, we've got a lot of themes of loneliness and isolation that kind of translate throughout the entire episode. I think that, like, the dynamic between Lan and Moiraine really exudes the idea, even of the title of the show, like a taste of solitude. They're in the same place, but they're like existing as two completely separate entities from one another. And as much as Lan's trying, Moiraine is like, bro, give me my space right now.
Yeah, it would be really easy to kind of put blame on one person.
Yeah.
In this dynamic, but it does a good job of showing how caught up they're really within their own shells, and like you said, they're existing in their own space but not together, and both of them just can't put a wedge through whatever wall is happening right now.
Right, and they're not the only characters experiencing solitude in this episode. We also have the solitude of Rand and the solitude of Egwene.
Yeah, and everyone thinks Rand is gone. We've got Matt in a jail cell.
I do love Liandrin as a character. Some of my favorite characters in this world are actually the villains. Only because they
absolutely
bring so much theatrics to it. Like, our protagonist characters don't bring the drama at the same level as some of my favorite villain characters do.
No, and I think that's another thing that production has done a really good job of, because I'll be honest, the villains in the books are just kind of like, mwahaha, I'm bad. And it's like, okay. Like, they can be kind of boring at times. Liandrin, after season 1, I was like, this is a character, probably out of all of the characters that are more in the, like, antagonistic side, that I need to see more of. She has that monologue before she gentles Logain in season 1, where I was like, that's the line of the season. Hands down, the way that monologue was delivered, like that, it was the best for me of that season. So going into this season, seeing more of her, I was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, I really enjoy seeing like her dark side kind of flourish in the show.
I think that segment in this episode of her pretty much pinning Nynaeve to the wall and forcing Nynaeve to channel out of fear. Like it's an incredible scene.
Yeah. And
Incredible.
isn't that exactly the kind of thing that Moiraine was talking about an Aes Sedai doing to her when she was at the White Tower?
Yes. This is something that happened in New Spring. It's in the prequel, but when Moiraine and Swan Sanche were novices together or accepted together, there's an Aes Sedai named Elida who is possibly being played by Sheree Agdashlu, Christian Avasarala from The
Oh, I love
Expanse.
her.
This character pretty much beat the snot out of Moiraine and Swan Sanche on multiple occasions under the guise of teaching them how to channel and preparing them for their Aes Sedai test. I mean, you could make whatever guesses you want. Maybe she really did want to help in her own way, but it's pretty clear that she's just torturing them.
Yeah.
So,
She
like,
sounds like a candidate to add to the ChatGPT diagnosis list.
do you want to explain to people who are joining in about this? Because we've talked about it. They don't know.
So, because like we both really love the show and we've seen it a lot, I wanted to give it like a new edge of interpretation. So, I asked ChatGPT to give psychiatric assessments to characters from the Wheel of Time. And I got to tell you, they've been really entertaining thus far.
Okay, we talked about Liandrin. Did you have her
I
on
do
the
have a
list?
Liandrin. ChatGPT believes that Liandrin suffers from antisocial personality disorder, evidenced by her lack of empathy, deceitfulness, and willingness to harm others to achieve her goal. She also has clear signs of narcissistic traits, enjoying the power and control she holds over others. But there are some considerations. Her motives stem partly from the Black Aja's influence, but her behavior suggests that she's well suited for dark inclinations.
Yeah.
You think it hit it
Yeah.
right?
I think it's pretty close. I think there's also, because we know in future episodes that she's trying to keep her son alive.
Is that part of the book
and
too?
no, in the book, her reasoning for joining the Black Aja is just like her wanting power. Like it's very surface level, pretty boring stuff.
I did not
So
define that it needs to go from the show only. So I have a feeling that it ran these psychiatric assessments on everybody based on their book character.
book character, yeah. I think one of the things that's kind of cool about Show Leandrin, though, is that her relationship with Nynaeve, it's obviously pretty messed up, but at the same time, you have to wonder, is she trying to, like, what's the motive here? Does she want Nynaeve to reach her full potential? And does she want Nynaeve to reach her full potential because she wants to get her to join the Black Aja? Because like everyone says, every 5 minutes in this show, Nynaeve, you're the most powerful channeler that we've ever seen in 1,000 years, over and over again. So, like, having someone like her on your side, that's a get, right? Like, imagine being Leandrin and it was like, look, we got this girl. She's Forsaken level in the One Power and she's joining our team. Like, that would be a really great way to elevate her status in the Black Aja.
Absolutely.
I think that's my like headcanon for the
Okay.
show, but
Yeah, I do have a lot of questions about like, is she invested in Nynaeve because of the Black Aja aspect? Does she just want to be the one who's the famed mentor of such a powerful Aes Sedai? I think there's a lot of areas here that she could benefit in.
yeah. And I think too, like the way that they've established Nynaeve on the show, especially in this episode, I think what they're really doing is trying to highlight the two different personalities between Nynaeve and Egwene. A lot of this episode is dealing with these two characters, these two women, and how they perceive the environment around them. And I find it really, really interesting, especially in this episode, because the way they show it, I think, is a perfect way to clue in audiences of what to expect for the entire future of these two characters from where they begin and where they end, like all of the clues are here, like right in the first minutes of the
They
episode.
are, which I really enjoy this as an opening episode for the season because I feel like we cover a lot of ground kind of quickly, but without it feeling overly like sped up.
Yeah. What do you think, even with your chat GPT summaries, what do you think about Nynaeve versus Egwene? You haven't read all the books, you know a lot of details, but
Mm,
I think I'm still curious, like what exactly you think.
I think that a lot of Nynaeve's behaviors are genuinely sourced from her trauma in the earlier responsibilities as the wisdom of Emmons Field. She even talks about in the first season how traumatic it was with the person who was, is it called a mentor? Like, what would it be called?
Yeah, like her wisdom
Yeah,
that she was apprenticing
the
under.
person that she apprenticed under, she really like outlined how they never cut her any slack by any means. It seems like she's receiving the traumatic offset of like the traumas that her wisdom went through. You know, the walking to the tower,
Yeah.
being rejected for being a peasant, having to come back. And she seems to really carry those burdens and traumas even with her.
Yeah. I think that was a smart way to do it in the show because they didn't have a lot of time to just show what her daily life looked like as the wisdom.
Right.
Like they were putting in so much in that first episode. They didn't have time to show her pretty much getting yelled at and talked down to because no one thought she was capable enough. She's too young. She's not old enough. She's not trusted to make the decisions that she's making in such a high position as a young woman. But like when we get into the kitchen scene, this is, I
Girl.
think, like, I think my absolute love, like, I love Nynaeve is because she falls into this trope of characters where it's just like, screw the rules. I'm doing what's best. I'm doing what's right. And I don't give a shit about the rules. She's going by her own personal, like, what she feels is right and wrong. Like, her justice levels are just like, there's the line, you step over it, and she's gonna be your enemy for life. Like, she does not play around with that type of thing. And then you have Egwene, who is like, she's almost dogmatic about the rules that are put in place, like becoming an Aes Sedai. Like, you have to do this, and like this demeaning work makes you a better person. This is just how the rules are, and you have to adhere to it. So putting these two characters together, it's chef's
It really
kiss. Love
is.
it.
Especially because like Egwene is, I would say, much more of like very ambitious.
I've heard people say that Egwene is like the ooh girl, like in class when the teacher's like, who knows the answer? She's like the ooh, pick me.
Well,
I
do
know.
you,
Teacher,
do you
me.
want to know what ChatGPT has to say about her?
Yes,
It said
please.
Egwene may align with a type A personality, highly competitive and driven to prove herself, with some tendencies towards perfectionism and obsessive behaviors.
Did you
I
read the
didn't.
ones for
I didn't.
Nynaeve?
So
Okay.
the Chat GPT diagnosis for Nynaeve is intermittent explosive disorder. Might capture her anger episodes. And it's so funny that you brought up the scene in the kitchen because as soon as you brought it up, I was like, that's exactly what ChatGPT identified was like those intermittent explosions of rage that she has where, she does things like, you know what? I'm just going to drink the gross water. Girl, you
Yeah.
couldn't hold me in a fire to get me to drink that water.
uh well, it's just I love what this also kind of says about the White Tower as a whole because as a book reader starting out in the series, you see this like shining beacon of a city and the women there. And it's like, as you're getting right into the books, you're like, ooh, can we go back to this place? I need to know more about these mysterious Aes Sedai and what does like this order look like and what is it like inside the tower, and it's all very like sparkling and clean and exciting and interesting, but the further you go on, you definitely start to see some question marks with how they act and the things that they do.
I think one of my biggest questions is like that whole system they have where they never have to hire employees because they're always making the lowest level members do that work.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
they're like, oh my God, you guys are so great. Nynaeve, you're so powerful. Okay, pick up trash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Egwene is literally a walking trash can in this
Yeah.
episode. She's walking by and they're just pretty much throwing trash
Yeah, I
at
can't
her.
remember the
And
woman.
she's
I
happy to do it.
absolutely recognize her from later episodes, but I was like, she just walks right in and just tosses that trash. And Nynaeve's like, okay, there's my place. Or sorry, Egwene was like, all right, so there's my place. And you can see it in her face. Like, it's got to be kind of disheartening to go there, to be like hyped up by everybody, and then get in there and it just be like this.
Yeah, it's like the highest position that anyone in the world can rise to is being an Aes Sedai, essentially.
Right.
And so like you get there and it's like, oh, how exciting. And it's like, no, it's actually kind of awful.
And you know, I'm not saying that anybody shouldn't pay their dues or anything like that, but I think that a lot of people that are coming in are either, as we learn, like what kind of paying their way in, or they're found and then they're prepared for what's about to happen. Nynaeve and Egwene were like plucked out of their life, put in a highly dangerous and traumatic situation, and then we're like, you know what? We're going to have you do this whether you want to or not.
And Egwene legitimately wants to be there.
Right.
And Nynaeve is just there because she wants to make sure that Egwene is
Yeah,
safe.
she's
So,
just there like some sort of cop, like private security. And like it really comes out in these moments where they're like in class kind of thing. Like, and I get that Alana just bursting into the kitchens is like an impromptu class, but Nynaeve doesn't have the same motives as Egwene for being there. So I think that like what's happening is a lot harder for Nynaeve to accept, especially because she had a position of, you know, reverence as Emmonsfield's wisdom.
Yeah.
And now she's going to like the very bottom all over again. And everybody's putting this insane pressure on her to perform because she's so powerful, instead of anybody trying to legitimately work with her on these emotional blocks she's experiencing.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, what do? They send Liandrin in, which it gets her to channel,
it gets the
but
job done.
It's not helping the block. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know as though I think that Liandrin's methods of like fear-based channeling have sustainability.
They don't. They don't. And I mean, in the books, it's kind of heartbreaking because that becomes a crutch for Nynaeve, where she has to literally get herself so amped, so angry, and so distressed to actually channel that it's just self-inflicted harm over and over again just to get, like the magic out of her body,
Right.
which... Well, I did write down one, again, like funny Liandrin quote. When that whole scene is going on, Liandrin says, warders are just nothing more than glorified dogs stroking the ego of their Aes Sedai.
Dude,
and
you know what one of my favorite qualities of Liandrin is the misandry. She is a true misandrist. If anybody is wondering what like the escalation from feminist to misandrist looks like, check Liandrin. She's like a perfect poster child for misandry, but I love it because a lot of times if you just replace the word warder with men, it's saying the same thing.
No, that's true. Okay, so since I don't think you'll know the book answer to this.
Probably not.
This is more of like a question, go on your feels type of thing.
Let's hear it.
Because Liandrin's observations about warders and men are pretty much like the baseline for anyone in the Red Aja.
Okay.
If, hypothetically, men couldn't channel and like the Red Aja becomes like obsolete, what do you think they would do?
If the White Tower were to be like, you know what? We're going to lay off all the Reds. We're going to close their department and we're going to outsource all of their duties amongst the other Ajas. I think the only reasonable next move is to either form your own coalition or join the Black Aja.
Okay. Now, what if they stayed as Aes Sedai and they're the Reds like weren't kicked out, but they just didn't have their original job. What could you see them
Their
doing?
original job under the guise of their new job. Like, quite
But what if there
frankly,
was no what? So just out there killing men for
I mean,
funsies?
I think it would probably depend on like a individual basis at some level, but someone like Liandrin, yeah, they're gonna just find a new way to do what they want under the guise of their new position. Some of the Red Aja may not be as fully in as Liandrin is, and so maybe they adapt to their new positions well. But I think for people like Liandrin, that it's a part of her identity. It would
Yeah.
How does she become a completely different person?
Well, okay, and here's the other thing too. We know Leandrin is Black Aja.
Right.
So that's obviously going to factor in with like how awful she is. Even though the majority of the Red Aja still hold the same ideas as Leandrin does about men and male channelers and warders, possibly warders, Leandrin's like, I feel, oh man, girl, I'm just so excited for you to meet Elida. like, like scrap everything that I was about to say. I'm just really excited for you to meet Elida. It's gonna be great.
Do you think she'll be in season 3 of the show?
Yeah,
Okay.
she has to be. Yeah,
All right. I'm excited to see the new characters for season 3.
me too. Me too. Elida's one of them, and I really want to see Elaine Chircon's brother and half brother. They are. I find them very entertaining. Do I like them? Not really, but do I find them entertaining? Absolutely. But what about, okay, so we haven't really talked about more about what's going on with Moraine's storyline and Perrin and the Shienarans.
You know,
Is it
Perrin is a character that I really enjoy, but also get really annoyed with.
ooh, okay.
Like,
More than Matt or
oh
less
my
than
God,
Matt?
Matt could go away and I would be happy. Like, it's he's like that person who's in the friend group that you don't want to leave out, but at the same time, like, he just keeps causing problems at this point. He's
Yeah.
lucky everybody loves him so much. Because, like, ghosting me at the ways would have made me feel some type of way.
I love that you openly dislike Matt because I can see like book readers listening and being
Fuming.
like, no, no,
Fuming.
no.
But all I'm going on is the show. And he has yet to do literally anything impressive yet. And I get, like, we're all supposed to feel bad for him that Liandrin has him jailed, but maybe if he didn't ghost his friends at the ways, she wouldn't have been able to jail him. Just saying.
That's true.
But
That's
but when we
true.
talk about Perrin, like, I really enjoy that Perrin is so introspective, and like you can really see it play out how he wrestles with his inner nature, especially as he's like learning about this connection to wolves.
Yeah, I wrote down this was one of the quotes that like my ears perked up when he's talking to, I believe it's Ingtar after they're finished burying all those bodies. He says, there's a rage inside of me, and the closer we get to finding him, talking about Padan Fain, the more it grows. I'm scared that when we finally come face to face, I won't be able to stop myself.
You know
And
who ChatGPT gave a real barn burner of a diagnosis to?
Perrin?
Padan Fain.
Oh.
Oh, it gave.
I
it
love
gave,
Padan Fain.
This is
He's
the diagnosis from ChatGPT for Perrin. Adjustment disorder with depressive features might fit his struggle to reconcile his dual nature and his sense of guilt over violence. He also exhibits symptoms of avoidant personality disorder due to his tendency to withdraw and avoid conflict.
Wait. Does it say anything about multiple personality disorder? Just curious.
No, not for him, but it does for someone
okay.
else.
Is it Ishamael?
It is not. I was
Huh.
surprised. I was surprised.
Who is it?
It's Rand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dissociative
Duh.
dissociative identity disorder.
I mean, that totally fits.
Well, here's what it said. It said for
he's
Rand,
Theron.
dissociative identity disorder could be considered given his fragmented sense of self through the nature of his alters influenced by reincarnation and prophecy rather than trauma alone. He also displays signs of paranoid personality disorder due to constant threats and betrayals, especially as he becomes more isolated.
Yeah. Ooh, Rand hasn't even...
Look.
He hasn't even started his sad Rand, mad, scary Rand journey yet, so...
Exactly. But granted, ChatGPT is taking, like, the whole of the character from the books and writing its, psychiatric diagnoses off of that. But yeah.
I feel like, I mean, this is basically like the therapy episode.
Basically.
We're just going through. Was there anything about the Perrin plotline that you liked or disliked? Or just that stood out?
I really love the relationship that he's building with Loial.
Oh, Loial.
Like, I love Loial. I really enjoy watching Perrin learn about himself away from his friends, too. I think that this is going to give him a chance to kind of build his own identity outside of that core group of friends.
Based on that quote about Padan Fain, where Perrin is basically like, I literally am afraid that if I see him, I'm going to tear him apart piece by piece. Do you hope that happens? Do you want to see it?
Man, Padan Fain he's a real agent of chaos,
I love Padan Fain. I think he is such a creep show. I love the way that, especially in the books, how like detailed his backstory is, because he's like multiple entities of beings like smashed into one. And in the show, he's just kind of like, you get a little bit of that. Well, but he's kind of this like, he's so theatrical. He's so like that beginning cold open where everybody's sitting at that table with the little girl, like everyone's got their masks on and he like like pulls his hood off and gives that like creepy grin to this little girl, and I'm just like, man,
he is deeply unhinged.
Yes. I love Padan Fain.
So do I, but he's like one of those villains that I really enjoy based on how deeply unhinged they are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to hang out with him in real life, but I do enjoy watching him like spread chaos. Like you had talked about, like all of these beings and the supernatural corruption that comes from that.
Yeah. I think in season 3, if we go by the books, we will see some type of... We will see possibly Perrin and Padan Fain reunite at some point.
Yeah.
And I hope this is giving... I'm going to make a prediction.
I hope Perrin's ready.
Yeah, me too. But I think Perrin's got a lot to do next season. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to be very, very vague. But okay. I think him seeing Padan Fain might be the gunfire to like get Perrin to accept like he has to fight. Like he has to become a monster in a way to keep others safe, because he's been hanging out in season 1 with the Tuatha and their whole peace before everything spiel, which, it's noble if you don't live in a world where there are human monster hybrids that want to tear your guts out and Forsaken. We could talk about that for hours. It's noble, whatever, but Perrin doesn't really see where he fits in this world anymore due to killing his wife and being afraid of violence and what he's capable of. But on the other hand, that's not reality. That's not the reality of this world. And it's a terrifying, scary, dangerous place to be in when you're actively being hunted by the spawn of the Dark One.
Yeah.
So Perrin's gonna have to come to grips with that, and I'm so ready to see Perrin 2.0 acknowledging the realities of this.
You know how everybody kind of has like their primary op in this story,
yeah.
And Padan Fain being Perrin's is really interesting because of the huge disparages between where they're starting out. Like, who knows how long Padan Fain's had being supernaturally corrupted from the Dark One and the Mashadar. Like,
right.
He has all of this time of being a sadist under his belt, and Perrin is going to have to catch up incredibly quickly.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just all of that super valid, but it's not just Padan Fain. Like these entities of darkness, of the shadow, like everywhere, this cold open is essentially there for one reason, to show that literally anyone could be Black Aja, Dark Friend, henchman of the Dark One.
Right.
That's it. So like Perrin being on this quest, like this journey, all of his friends as well, it's basically just saying like, look, you're eventually going to come face to face with the darkest things that you just don't want to see, but it's going to happen.
And it could be right under your nose the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to hear ChatGPT's psychoanalysis of Padan Fain?
Absolutely. Yes.
Fain is obsessive, vengeful, and deeply unhinged, displaying an eerie pleasure in chaos and corruption. His transformation over time leaves him almost unrecognizable as a former peddler. Schizodefective order with features of both psychosis and mania may be fitting due to his split from reality and fixation on destruction, especially towards Rand. He also exhibits the traits of sadistic personality disorder, enjoying others' suffering and driven by his malevolent sense of purpose. Between the supernatural corruption from the Dark One and the Mashadar compounding his behavior, it turns him into something beyond human psychology, a personification of malice.
Yeah.
And actually, like that last line that he's the personification of malice fits his character so well. Like if you had to sum him up in one line, personification of malice would do it.
I really like that because Padan Fain's original self was just some guy, right? Like just some regular dude. And he showed up in this city called Eredhall, which is now Shadar Logoth. We saw that in season 1. But he shows up in this city during a huge war where all of these nations were just getting absolutely ravaged by like Trollocs, like thousands and thousands and thousands just came up out of nowhere and just started wrecking things for everybody. And so Padan Fain, aka Mordeth, shows up and he's like, hey, King of Eredhall, what if, hear me out, that in order to fight the dark, the shadow, we play dirty and we fight with darkness ourselves? And King's like, great idea, love it, I'll have 14. And it obviously does not work. And pretty much like overnight, it's a ghost town. Nobody knows where all the inhabitants of the city went. It's just like an empty, shadowy, misty, like disappearance, like just ruins. And like that's his story. And like Padan Fain becomes merged with this entity, and it is like, it pretty much like sets him up for who he's going to be. And then on top of that, Padan Fain swears loyalties to the Dark One. And in the books it says, so this is already after his like, so we've got Mordeth on one hand, and then we've got Padan Fain being like, yes, Dark One, I'll do whatever you want. And then the books say that Padan Fain was distilled and the Dark One like took his humanity from him in a way. And then later we've got Padan Fain, who is just like this empty husk of a search hound for the Dark One.
Okay.
Meshed with Mordeth, this character from a long time ago that ended up trapped in this city where no one else survived. And like, that's Padan Fain.
I keep thinking about you talking about distilling Padan Fain. And it makes me like think about taking the portions of his personality that they want to exacerbate and distilling it down to just that.
No, that's a great point. Like what ChatGPT read out for us.
Yeah.
It took everything that was human and just left that.
Exactly.
No, that's a really good point. And maybe that's exactly what Robert Jordan meant when he said distilling.
I really enjoy the last scene of this episode. No matter how many times I see it, I can't not enjoy it. Moiraine.
Are we talking about Moiraine?
Yeah,
okay.
We're talking about Moiraine and the Fades. You know, she's like hiding in the dark. She knows they're coming. And in the final hour, or really like the final seconds, Lan shows up and really does help
He
to
Arya
say,
Starks out of a tree
yeah,
and kills
it was very much
kills the Night King.
He comes flying out to kill the Night King. Oh my god, now like I can definitely see the parallels there. And like even though it's really predictable that that's going to happen because like we all know Moraine's not going away right now, they do a good job of like the intense build up into that moment.
Yeah, I really like this moment, and it's not really so much tied to the characters, but just like what the production did in terms of like use of the one power in battle, because you've got Moiraine and Lan just wrecked by this group of Fades, and it's like all hope is lost, right?
Right. Moiraine can't
but
channel, Lan can't connect to her, like
Lan can't move.
Right. Like they're really like out on a limb at one point.
Yeah, it's rough. And what I think is really cool is there's a definite nod to the books with the Fades. When they're in the darkness, when they're in the shadow, they can almost kind of teleport. Like they can almost kind of like when they're in the shadow, like you can't even see how fast they are. And so darkness is like this huge advantage for them. And so Verin like sends fire to the sword of her warder Tomas, and he lights the bitch up. He's got this glowing sword, and this obviously puts the Fades at a disadvantage. But before she does this, she stuns them with like percussive sound. So she says, "Cover your ears." Well, for a creature that doesn't have eyes, like how can you disorient them with sound? So like I just thought that was really clever, and I think despite me really loving the books, that's one thing that I think Robert Jordan never really went super far into, because it was always just like, you know, like lightning strikes taking out Trollocs or fire or whatever, but you didn't really get to see the characters who can channel play with the one power in a more tactical way, I guess.
No, you're right. Actually, the battle scenes, like there are a couple good battle scenes in season 1, but the battle scenes of season 2 are far and away better.
Yeah, they look better.
Yeah.
They just, it's,
yeah.
The CGI
overall
is better.
They are better in season 2.
Yeah.
I do like Tomas as a warder too.
He's just chill.
Yeah, he seems to be like a mid-ground between like who are Alana's warders? Like Lan and Alana's warders. Like Tomas seems to be that mid-ground.
Yeah. And I think too a lot of that has to do with his Aes Sedai being of the brown Aja. And again, like this is just coming to me. Verin is of the brown Aja. She would have had studied like Fades, and in the book she's really into like biology of like the shadow spawn and stuff like that. So like her coming with these weaves fits perfectly to her character.
Yeah.
Like she would know what tactics would be the most effective.
And she'd have her warder prepared for that.
Exactly. And I love the teamwork here. It was really good.
So do I. I am curious though, can you answer this? How does Moiraine end up with them? Is it just like those are safe people, so that's who she went to after she lost her magic?
Yeah. So this is kind of a show thing, but Verin is kind of like in seclusion, and it fits with the brown Aja. Like they keep to themselves and they're just always busy studying. So she probably knew Verin for a really long time and knew she could trust her. It was like a safe haven for her.
Okay. That's kind of what I assumed, but they never really like touch on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because they really open up their villa to her. Like
they do.
Girl, she's holding business meetings. Like she's having her dinner served to her in other areas. Like
yeah.
She moved in and turned that into her place of business.
I want to live there.
Oh, absolutely.
That's probably one of my favorite sets. Like the set decorations there was just so good. I have a question for you.
All
this
right.
is a big time prediction type thing.
Okay.
So this episode, we talked about this round table meeting with all of these dark friends and the idea that literally anyone could be a dark friend. Is there anyone in this second season that hasn't been outed as a dark friend where you're like, they could be one?
You know who I think would be a really fun choice, but I don't think it's gonna happen, is Egwene becoming Black Aja would be really fun. Like
That would be incredible.
I mean, granted, I took it to like the most unhinged place I could, but that would be fun. I do think that we're going to find out that multiple characters that we have already had a lot of interaction with are going to be Darkfriends, and I have a feeling that they are non-obvious Aes Sedai.
Okay.
Like people who have been in our story so far but haven't had a big enough presence to call too much attention, because Liandrin's like an obvious Black Aja choice. Like drawing the connection from A to B there is like a millimeter.
Right.
Let's use Verin as an example. Shocking. And Verin's actually like, those words that happen later have me like, do I need to get a magnifying glass out or start a private like incognito file about you? What's Verin's sister's name?
Adeleas.
I don't think Adeleas is, because she's too busy living her best life and she's ultimate brat. I love her.
There's also later in one of the episodes in this season where some of Alana's warders are missing in action when needed, that I feel like is kind of like leading up to a should we trust them type of thing.
Yeah, there's that, but like
Green Aja just doesn't feel dark friend enough, because they're really just out there drinking mocktails and snacking and having a good time.
Yeah, it seems more like we're gonna find it in one of the like brown Aja or maybe gray Aja.
Okay, last question before we wrap it up.
Okay.
If you were to found your own Aja, what color and what would it do?
Oh, okay. Ooh. What colors are available? Can I use
purple, pink?
I was actually my first thought was purple, but I wanted to make sure. Because some of my favorite colors are already taken, we're going to have to go to one of my other favorite colors that is available. I'm going to go with like a deep purple that like almost has hints of like reddish black in it.
Ooh, okay.
And then
like an eggplant?
Yeah. And I think that I would make us the like sociology, psychology division.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I think that the Aja are really like missing out on an area that could help them being in like the study of sociology and psychology.
Yeah. I guess the closest would be the white maybe, but they're more just like logic, I guess.
Yeah, logic and like the sciences of like behavior run parallel, but I can see where like a sociology department could help them a lot.
Yeah, and especially like going back to Nynaeve with her block, you would want someone capable to help someone like that and not just beating it out of her.
Right.
Clearly.
Yeah. So I think that would be ooh, do they have a department of anthropology? Because that would be my second choice.
Probably, that would lean probably more under the Browns.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they actually did studies of like societal groups and that, but like, yeah, I think they need like a little bit more study into the intangible aspects of the mind, and then they could create like little litmus tests to test their own people.
Yeah, they could make the tests for what Aja you like the MBTI of the White Tower.
Ooh. I'm calling the different Ajas the different MBTIs of the White Tower now.
So I think that wraps up everything. If you've made it this far, please like this video. If you would like to boost it, like, share, and we will be back with the next episode next week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.